There are stories that glimmer like lanterns, and those that throb like shipwrecks. This one rises from the deep, a tale of salt and of hunger, of desire like the tides, forever reaching and never full. Where a shack bleeds in silence, and a fisherman kneels before a voice with gills, speaking in prophecies. Where wishes bloom, rot, and bloom again. This is no bedtime fable. It is a reckoning. So lean in close, dear listener. Let the wind carry you backwards, past firelight and past kindness, into a world where even the sea has its limits. Welcome to the Fisherman and His Wife. The sea did not sing in this place. It heaved, it breathed, it scraped the shore like something ancient and dying, grinding stone into salt and salt into sand. Beside that sea stood a shack, weather-beaten, half sunk into the bluff. It leaned like it was tired of standing. Its roof, patched with driftwood and fishing nets that snapped in the wind. There were no flowers, no birds, only the endless rhythm of waves gnawing at the edge of the earth. Inside the shack lived a fisherman and his wife. He was quiet, skin tanned to leather, his eyes always on the horizon. His days were spent with nets and silence, casting lines into waters that had long since forgotten kindness. She was sharp-featured, sharp-tongued, not cruel, not yet, but always wanting a fire that stayed lit, a roof that didn't leak, a life that didn't taste like cold porridge and spoiled tide. "I married a man," she would mutter, "not a seaweed-soaked ghost." He'd say nothing. Every morning he went to the sea. Every evening he came back with little or nothing. They boiled what they could, ate what they must, spoke only when the silence turned sour. The sea was always there, waiting. It was gray when it happened. The fisherman stood knee-deep in the surf, casting his net into waters that had never been generous. The wind bit through his coat. The sky hung low, heavy with unshed rain. He had caught nothing all week, nothing but driftwood and bones. Then the net went taut. He pulled, expecting a tangle of seaweed or a rusted tin. But what broke the surface was neither. It was a fish. Large, pale, its scales shimmered like moonlight on oil. Its eyes were too human, and when it opened its mouth, it did not gasp, it spoke. "Fisherman, I am not what I seem. I am an enchanted prince, cursed long ago. Spare me, and I will grant you anything you desire." The fisherman stared. He had seen strange things in the tide. Drowned sailors with smiles, crabs that whispered, but never this. He hesitated. Then he cut the net. The fish slipped back into the sea without a splash. He stood there for a long time, the wind howling around him, the waves licking at his boots. When he returned to the shack, his wife was waiting. She saw the empty bucket and scowled. "Nothing again?" He told her about the fish. She listened, arms crossed, eyes narrowing. "And you let it go?" "It asked me to." "It offered you anything?" He nodded. She stepped closer. "Then go back. Ask for a cottage, a real one, with a hearth that doesn't smoke and a roof that doesn't leak." He opened his mouth to protest. She raised her hand. "You let a wish slip through your fingers. Go, call it back." And so he did. The sea was different when he returned. The waves were higher, the sky darker. The wind carried a scent like rust and lilies. He stood at the edge of the water and called out, not with words, but with the memory of the fish's voice. The sea answered. The water churned, the surface split, and the fish rose again, its eyes gleaming like wet coins. "What does she want?" it asked. The fisherman swallowed. "A cottage, with warmth, and walls that hold." The fish blinked once. "Go home," it said. "She has it already." And then it was gone. The fisherman turned. The path back to the shack was gone. In its place stood a small cottage, stone walls, a thatched roof, smoke curling from the chimney. The door creaked open. His wife stood inside smiling. For the first time in years, she looked content. The cottage was warm, the hearth burned clean, the roof held against the wind. For a time, the wife was pleased. She swept the stone floor with pride. She cooked with herbs instead of salt. She even smiled when the fisherman returned from the shore, empty-handed but dry. But contentment is a shallow tide. Within a week, she stood at the window, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "It's small," she said. "Cramped. The smoke still clings to the rafters. I want more." The fisherman looked up from his stool. "It's enough." "For you, maybe. But I was not born to rot in stone. Go back. Ask the fish for a manor. With servants. With land." He hesitated. She stepped closer. "You let it go. It owes you." And so he went. The sea was darker now. The waves slapped the shore like open palms. The wind carried a scent of iron. He called. The fish rose. "What does she want now?" it asked. The fisherman lowered his eyes. "A manor with land." The fish blinked. "Go home." The cottage was gone. In its place stood a manor of pale stone and black glass. Servants bowed, horses stamped in the stables. The wife stood on the balcony, dressed in silk. She smiled. For a day. The manor was grand. The halls echoed with footsteps. The windows looked out over fields that had never belonged to them. But the wife did not walk the gardens. She paced the corridors. "It's not enough," she'd said. "I want to be a queen." The fisherman paled. "That's not a thing to ask." "Why not? The fish grants wishes. Let it grant this." He shook his head. "The sea is changing." She stepped close. "Then change with it." He returned to the shore. The sky was bruised. The waves clawed at the sand. The wind howled like something wounded. He called. The fish rose, slower this time. "What does she want now?" The fisherman's voice cracked. "To be a queen." The fish stared at him for a long moment. "Go home." The manor was gone. In its place stood a palace, tall towers, banners snapping in the wind, guards at every gate. The wife sat on a throne of carved bone and velvet. A crown rested on her brow. She smiled. For a day. The palace was not enough. She sat on her throne, draped in velvet, surrounded by servants who bowed too deeply and spoke too softly. She wore jewels that once belonged to queens, and still her fingers itched for more. "I want to be an empress," she said. The fisherman flinched. "You already rule." "I want to rule them," she snapped. "Kings, queens, the world." He stared at her. "The sea is angry." She stood. "Then let it rage." He returned to the shore. The sky was black. The waves clawed at the rocks like beasts. The wind screamed through the gullies, and the sand stung like ash. He called. The fish rose slowly, its eyes duller now, its voice like stone dragged across stone. "What does she want now?" The fisherman's voice broke. "To be an empress." The fish did not blink. "Go home." The palace was gone. In its place stood a fortress of obsidian and fire. Banners of blood-red silk snapped in the wind. Armies knelt in the courtyard. The wife stood atop a tower, arms outstretched, as if she could catch the sun. She smiled. For a day. The next morning, she did not rise from bed. She stared at the ceiling, her crown askew, her eyes hollow. The fisherman brought her bread. She did not eat. He asked what troubled her. She turned her head slowly, as if the air had thickened. I want to be a god. He dropped the tray. She sat up. Why not? I've ruled men. I've ruled kings. I've ruled the church. What's left but the sky? He backed away. That's not a wish. That's a curse. She stood. Then let it be both. He fled to the sea. The sky was split. The waves rose like mountains. Lightning danced across the horizon. The wind howled with voices that were not his. He called. The fish rose, barely visible beneath the churning water. What does she want now? The fisherman fell to his knees. To be a god. The fish stared at him for a long, long time. Then it sank without a word. The sea went still. The sky cleared. The wind died. He returned home. The fortress was gone. The palace was gone. The manor, the cottage, all gone. Only the shack remained. The wife sat outside, barefoot in the sand, staring at the sea. She didn't speak. She didn't smile. And the sea didn't answer again. The shack was smaller than he remembered. The roof sagged. The hearth was cold. The nets hung limp from the rafters, untouched by wind or fish. The sea had taken everything it had given, and more. The wife sat on the threshold, her hands folded in her lap. She didn't speak. She didn't weep. She stared at the horizon as if waiting for something to rise from it. The fisherman stood beside her, but she didn't look up. He tried to speak once, tried to say her name, but the word caught in his throat like a hook. So he sat beside her. Days passed, then weeks. The sea didn't speak again. They lived, if it could be called that. They ate what they could find. They slept beneath a roof that leaked. They didn't touch. They didn't dream. And the fish never returned. Years later, children would whisper about the shack by the sea. They said a woman lived there who once wore a crown of fire, that she had danced in halls of gold and spoken with angels, that she had tried to steal the sky. They say that the sea had punished her. Sometimes, when the tide was low, you could see the bones of a palace beneath the waves. Columns of coral, windows of glass, a throne made of driftwood and regret. And sometimes, if the wind was right, you could hear her voice, not screaming, not weeping, just asking. Again, and again, and again.